Hello, pod smashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit pod smash. You are where gaming goes to grab yourself a beer.
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer. You Selena scene.
I did well, but you see, here's the thing. There's a story because last week I did I Will Always Love You for our Love Stories episode.
And I thought it was Celine Dion.
You thought it was Celine Dion, and I didn't call you out that it was Whitney Houston, so I had to bring Celine in so that I could properly call you out in context.
I'm losing all of my cred because you also made a Hamilton reference that got by me, and I was unable to call you out on that. So now you're 2 for 300.
Yeah, I suppose so. But yeah, so we are your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are celebrating the release of what is quite possibly going to be a Game of the Year contender. Elden Ring is coming out, and so we are talking about FromSoftware, and I know you all are probably sick of us talking about this developer and these games. I hope not. I hope you're not sick of it. Tonight we are going to try to focus mostly on FromSoftware as a developer, their history, more than just They're more than just the makers of Dark Souls and that genre. So we're going to talk about all that and hopefully focus on all that and not the same tried and true argument that we've been having for the last year, though I'm sure it'll get touched on at some point.
Always.
So we're going to talk about all that and more, but we're Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer. So what are you drinking tonight?
I was inspired by a beer from Three Notched. I had it yesterday,
nice.
And it was amazing. And then I tried to go buy a can of it for the show so I could talk about it. But instead, they didn't have that. And I found this, which is from Blue Mountain Brewery called Phased Hazy Ipa. And it says on the can, "Our Hazy IPA is the kickback beer you deserve. Whether the day is done or just getting going, let the natural haze and juicy hop flavors of Phased do their thing." And it's 6.6%, so it's kind of light. Comes in pints. And it's Blue Mountain Brewery.
It comes in pints?
I have a pint can instead of a 12 ounce. And yeah, Blue Mountain Brewery is out here in Nelson County, which is kind of close to me.
That quote reminds me that when you lived here, we never did stand on tables and sing the Hobbit's Green Dragon song at the Red Dragon. And we could have gone, but the only brew for the brave and true comes from the Red Dragon.
We didn't.
That was a missed opportunity.
Yep. I mean, it's not like I can't visit.
That's true.
We can still make it a reality.
You can't. You're not. You're not from Hobbiton anymore. I guess Fredericksburg is Hobbiton. I guess technically I'm not from Hobbiton either.
I was gonna say, what does that mean? Leave you? You're not in Fredericksburg either. Yes, this is a very juicy, not as tropical as other IPAs, but it does have like that juicy feel in your mouth. It's good. It's balanced. Blue Mountain doesn't really make any junk. They're solid. Mm-hmm. So this is I've never had this until tonight. So this is good. Mm-hmm. I will probably get this again. Maybe I'll get it on tap when I go around the corner and visit them.
Yes, awesome. You're rubbing in the fact that you live around the corner from Blue Mountain. I got you.
Yes, that was a flex.
I'm not drinking anything particularly special. I grabbed a Mule Kicker from Jed's Mule Kicker from Food Lion. It is basically Moscow Mule in a can, but I did pour it into one of my nice Moscow Mule glasses. It is unfortunate, though, because over the weekend I did have a proper Moscow Mule made lovingly from the hands of a friend. And so this does not taste flattering by comparison, but it is a Moscow Mule in a can. And so therefore it's better than no Moscow Mule in anything. So it's okay. That's all I'm drinking. Nothing special, nothing fancy. Running low. Obviously need to make a run.
I bought this today at the store, a single.
Nice.
Because I was like, I don't have any beer.
Yeah. You got it. Word. All right. Well, that is beering talk. Is there anything you wanted to talk about?
I did it
today.
I have to tell my audience, it is done. It is finished. It took me about a year, almost a full calendar year, but I platinumed Persona 5 Royal.
Huzzah.
It is
Royal,
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say Royal because the original trophy list is awful.
A little bit bonkers, yeah. But
like
congratulations.
Thank you.
The players what you told me your impressions were as far as it stands in the ranking of games of all time, I believe you said.
Yes, of Termite's highest ranking games of all time. I believe there is a spot for Persona 5 in the top 3.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
And it would
That's
probably be
impressive.
third place.
You're
but
picky.
it's way up there.
You're very, very picky, and you have all those retro games you have on your best games
Yeah.
list, whereas I'm a little bit more liberal with my choices.
Yeah.
So
I mean, nothing is going to
that's-
dethrone Final Fantasy VII as the greatest video
I was
game
gonna
of all
say
time.
that's there.
That's
And
number
then-
one. Under that,
you
it goes between Breath of the Wild and Link to the Past, and it depends on how I feel in the moment. So that's
Right.
kind of like,
because that's what the
eh.
question I asked you. You said it was on your top 3 games of all time. So I assumed
Mm-hmm.
that Breath of the Wild was not on that list at all. And so
Oh,
I
it
asked
is.
you. I said, so
And
then
it's
did
not.
it deserve to dethrone Breath of the Wild in 2017 when it came out? And you said no. So
right. So then
Which
sits
is
at the
very
third
interesting.
spot, which
So that
would
means that-
dethrone Super Mario RPG and or Final
Ooh.
Fantasy Tactics.
Mm-hmm.
It would
Well, so that
dethrone
means
one of
in
those.
your in your top 3 games of all time, there are 2 entries from 2017. What a year! That might be your best year in gaming, there, Termite.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, cool. That yeah, I'm glad you said that you loved it because it reminded you of
It harkens back to the
JRPGs.
golden age of, for me,
Mhm.
the golden age of JRPGs, which was like the PlayStation 1 era, which is when
Right.
Final Fantasy 7 came out. But even prior to that, like those late Super Nintendo RPGs, Final Fantasy, we got it as 3, but actually 6 on Super Nintendo. And like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG, like those awesome, started with that. And then like the golden age kind of extended into PlayStation 1, where Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy Tactics, awesome RPGs of PlayStation 1, and Persona 5 just brought me back there. And it came out in 2017. I played the Royal version, which I guess came out in 2020. Was that when that dropped?
Yep,
And it had
came out the
the
same
Royal.
year as-
So I will like dig on the Royal version. I looked at a guide and it was like, this is where the Royal content starts. And I thought all of that was superfluous and like I didn't need any of it.
Really?
At that point, I was just
loved
kind of
it.
done. It was
I
fun.
know,
Like
but
I don't
was
hate
such
it.
a good story, and the whole thing with what's his face, and I won't ruin and spoil anything, but I thought that was an interesting twist with the bad guy of the Royal content is not something that I probably would have anticipated it had I played Persona 5 first, because that character was not in it.
You mean that character's
and-
not in the original Persona 5 game
No.
at all? Really?
No, which is totally telegraphing. If you had played Persona 5, you would have seen it coming.
right.
Huh.
Interesting.
But we never saw it coming because we started with the Royal.
Just like
See
the
what I did
song.
there? I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I called it. I got it.
You did. You got it. You got the
In the
references.
middle of that Persona 5 Platinum run, I also picked up the dancing rhythm game because I was jonesing for a rhythm game. I'm a DDR
Sure.
fan, Guitar Hero, Rock Band. Like I
And
love
he's
all those
good
games.
at it, guys. Like he's not just like,
Thank you.
oh, it's fun, but I suck. Like this is one thing that I will say. Well, okay, there's plenty of games I'll say Termite's better than me at, but this one is for sure like I when he said he was good at DDR, I was like, okay, whatever. Everybody says they're good at something. He actually is pretty good, guys. Like he actually might be like competition worthy. Like maybe not win, but you're definitely like you could compete in like a regional tournament and you could probably win that. Close, maybe close.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
There are some tryhards. We did see, like,
Yeah.
we witnessed a tryhard at one of those.
Yeah, when they start grabbing the
game
rail, I'm done. Like I'm bow out. You're good.
No,
and
they
a lot of
don't-
people.
No, you don't. No, you don't grab the rail. Like if you're using the rail, you're cheating. As far as I'm
No,
concerned,
the
you got to do it on
top-notch
skill
players
alone.
grab the rail.
Yeah, I don't care.
They
if
play the
it's-
songs that are like so fast and there's so many beats. They have to. Like it's a thing. It's a whole. It's
Yeah,
a
well, there's
skill.
a point in time where like Meta Knight was allowed in Smash Bros tournaments. And,
Yeah, it's just like that.
And that was legal at the time. Doesn't mean it's right? Like,
Yeah.
but whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and quibble over the DDR meta.
Yeah, it's the community is insane, and I was more into it in late high school and stuff. But all I was trying to say was I loved the Persona 5 music so
Yeah.
much that I saw that Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight existed, and I needed it
Mhm.
immediately. Didn't wait for a sale, barely did any research on it, and bought it on the PS Vita. There is a collection of Persona dancing games that you can get on the PS4, and you get some of them on the Vita as well. I don't remember the details. It was very complicated,
Nice.
but I have.
I knew
Persona
there was like
3,
Dancing in the
4,
Moonlight and
and
Dancing in
5.
the Starlight. So I
Yeah.
thought there were like 2 versions. Yeah.
Yep. So I platinumed
awesome.
that in the middle of my playthrough because that's on the Vita, so it's a little more accessible than like sitting down to a console. So I loved the world of Persona 5 so much that
It's great.
I jumped onto a dancing game, and now I have Strikers. That was free, so
Yes.
I will
You'll like it. I feel
eventually
like it's
find a lull in gaming and go play it because I love that.
good stuff. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to bring up, or if we just want to move on to favorite things. I feel like this is a good moment to move on to favorite things.
All right,
Let's do it. No
doing
segue.
this podcast
Go.
is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Favorite things.
It is a little side bit or little thing we're talking about or digging this week. It has absolutely nothing to do with our topic, mostly, and it could or not have anything to do with video games. Something as deep and meaningful as a growing experience with your child, or something as shallow as I really love this mouse pad that I'm rocking right now.
That's what I can talk about. That my speaking of growing experiences with your children, totally got nutshotted today. Like,
oh no, you did or your son
properly.
did?
No, I did.
Oh,
he was jumping on me. I even saw it coming. Ha! It's not gonna stop, is it?
Nope.
I did. I was sitting there and he was jumping on me, and I was like, he's gonna just blast me right in the crotch, isn't he? And he did, and it was like, and it was funny because he was shushing me. I was like moaning in pain. I was like, and he's like, shh. It's like, you're terrifying. All right, sorry, that's not my favorite thing though. What is your favorite thing?
My favorite thing. Oh, that is.
Do you want me to do mine first? If I'm rolling,
go
give you a second to think. So my favorite thing, actually, did happen the other weekend. So I could have actually talked about this last week, but I was actually really enjoying Arcane and still am. I want to talk about that last week. But also the previous weekend, I tried Ring Fit Adventure for the first time.
Oh, yeah,
and I've heard
I've
heard lots of stories about it, how it like transformed people's lives, right? Because like, it's us gamers sometimes have to choose between playing video games and taking care of ourselves, and some of us are better at it than others. I'm aware. Termite. I was always like, okay, well, it can't be that good, right? But then I like kind of learn more about it and how it's like, it's like an RPG, right? Like but you're exercising to fight things. It's like, that does sound cool, but yeah, whatever. Like, I'm sure it's still kind of gimmicky. Dude, it's so fun. Like, I didn't even feel like I was exercising. I know I was, and it definitely felt it later, but I was sitting there. My sister-in-law got it. She recently got a Switch, finally. Brianna, congratulations. And she's been getting all kinds of games for it and borrowing some of mine. But yeah, she managed to get her hands on Ring Fit and brought it over to have us try it out. And I immediately began looking up like used copies and stuff, like how I could snag myself a copy of it, because it's so much fun. And I do feel like I would actually get a lot of exercise if I were to do it, because it does. It's the gameplay loop is compelling enough that it's like, I want to go back and do more. I was like, I could put that thing up in my office and just like between work tasks while waiting for those green bars to finish loading, I could just sit there and like blast out some enemies, work my way through a level and get some exercise. So it's really cool. And I want to see more stuff like that from Nintendo, especially considering that like the Ring is out there, right? Like it's a whole accessory and there's only one game that it's compatible with. It's like, start cranking out like more Ring adventure games. It doesn't have to be the same premise or anything. It could be a whole different game. Make a Ring first person shooter or something. I don't know, but just like do more in that space, because it's really, really compelling stuff.
Yeah, Nintendo's always had like the Wii Fit, like Wii Sports, like trying to get people to move since the Wii, and then the Wii U, they continued it on. And then I guess this is like the Switch's version of Wii Fit.
It is.
Ring Fit. It has the name, right? Yeah.
It does, yeah. Well, and it's got more fleshed out. It's actually got a story, a narrative. It's got gameplay. There's a big old muscle dragon that you have to fight. And it's just it's really it took the foundation that they established with Wii and Wii Fit and made it like, now you're not just exercising for exercise sake. Like, you're playing a game and getting exercise. And I think that's a good marriage, a good start in regards to the marriage of those two things, in a very similar way that Pokemon Go successfully was able to do. So good on you, Nintendo, for continuing to push that.
Did you have it on the TV, or did you try handheld? Like, would it work handheld mode at all?
If it would work handheld mode, you'd still have to use the Ring. So you'd have to like set it on a table. No, we did it on the TV. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, it's $10 off at GameStop. At MSRB's for $80, and it's $70.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that.
I feel like I want to grab a used copy. There's so many used copies out there where everyone's like, I tried this once and then wasn't into it. It's like, great, awesome. I will take that off your hands for you and make you regret that purchase less. And I will also regret that purchase.
It's on Amazon for the same price. There you go.
Yeah. So
yeah.
All right, that's my favorite thing.
Neat. The only thing I can think of for my favorite thing, so it must be it, is that we randomly went to Three Notched Brewery yesterday. There's a restaurant. It's in downtown Charlottesville, and I did have a beer that I'm trying to remember the name of. I think it was like Green Forest or something. All of it caught me off guard. Going was already a surprise as it was. It's called Green Terrors Juicy IPA. It was the one that I wanted to get in the store and try and find one to drink tonight on the show. But we had a whole day here at the neighborhood. I had started a fire in the community fire pit, and it brought the neighbors out. So there were people coming and going at the fire pit. The kids are running all over the place. and everyone was having a good time. It was just a fun, like, chill Sunday afternoon. And then we all got hungry and we're like, crap, we don't really have time to cook. Let's go. And we rounded up the kids and went. So I love spontaneity. It's one of my favorite things. So spontaneity of going to Three Notched. And the food was fine. Like, it wasn't anything memorable. I got like a bowl of chili and some pretzel bites to dip into it, which is a pretty good combination. But the beer stood out, and just going. It was just a fun day. So yeah, that's my favorite thing.
Awesome.
One of the
good stuff.
One of our neighbors here was talking about COVID and like restrictions and all of the rubric, right? It's like, who got what? Are you vaccinated? Are you boosted? Have you had it before? You know, how many days do you quarantine? How do you isolate? Social distancing, masking. What do we do? How do we act in this world? And it was really cool because the way my posture where I stand now is that my wife and I have had it. We're also vaccinated and boosted. So our bodies will just murder anything COVID related. We will not spread it, like, because we have so high antibody counts from all of that we're not at risk anywhere. And it was cool to see, with no context, like, someone else point that out, like, oh, you guys are good. And I was like, because I was kind of a little like, should I be going to a restaurant right now? Like, Omicron's kind of taken over the country, and so maybe we can sit home still and kind of chill. And then once that, like, validation happened, I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Obviously, the restaurants are open. People are there, right? So why not us? It was good. It was fun. A little relieved to, like, have that. We still wore masks, to and from. But, yeah, it was good.
Awesome.
There's a light at the end of the COVID tunnel.
Yeah, I feel like the light at the end of the COVID tunnel is still kind of dark. And by that,
It's
what
out there.
I mean by that is it's the light at the end of this is just endemacy, right? Like, okay, it's no longer a pandemic. It's just now this is just the endemic thing.
That's
we
what I
all
mean.
have to get, like regularly boosted for, and then just deal with it. Accept the fact that we're gonna get it. That's sort of where I'm at. We had a close call too. Macy dropped off dinner at a friend's house, only to find out later that she spent like 30 minutes with the family too, and later she found out that the son had COVID.
About. We're not going to dox them.
And no, we're not going to dox them. And so she took a test, it came back negative, so we're good. But in that moment, I was just like, okay, like, seriously, like, it's not. But I'm not even like mad anymore. Like, I'm not even like, oh no. At this point, it's just like, forget it. Like, we had our chance to like really make a dent in this thing and really, stop it, and we failed as a species. Not even just as a country. As a country, we failed pretty hard, but as a species, it's like, yeah, like this could have been the banding together moment of all of humanity, where we really decided to fight this thing. But no, it killed off old people, so who cares, right? So
sad.
Anyways,
go watch Don't Look Up on Netflix. It pretty much articulates exactly everything we're talking about. It's perfect.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that leads us to our final segment, which is
DLC.
Downloadable content is a segment of our show where we have, usually it's a little discussion, a mini little talk that we have that may or may not be related to our main topic, that's usually based on some kind of prompt. Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. It's closer to our trivia, where we're going to keep tally and keep points, and the winner is going to get bragging rights. But it's a challenge, and this is in honor, of course, of talking about FromSoftware, games which are regularly considered by most subjectively as a challenging experience. So we're going to do a challenge for ourselves. So, to provide some context, longtime listeners are probably familiar with the little merry debate, merry war, as Shakespeare would say, that Termite and I have been engaging in since Penguin has discovered a love for the FromSoftware Souls-like titles, Souls and Souls-like titles, and in general has found a greater appreciation for difficult games. And Termite is still resistant to trying them for good reasons. Basically, the way the argument goes, Termite's position is, for those who may not be familiar with our merry war, Termite's position is, I only have a limited amount of time to play games. I don't want to play a game that is going to frustrate me and also be a long experience. And the games have a reputation of being frustrating and taking longer to accomplish because of that. Penguin's position is that they are not as hard as they seem, that the challenge is actually quite satisfying when you overcome it. And essentially, the greater meta debate comes down to a difference between approachability and accessibility and difficulty, and those being different things. So with that context in mind and those arguments out in the wild, The challenge for tonight is we're going to get through an entire conversation about From Software without bringing up those points. So the way this works is the minute Termite complains about easy modes is going to be or I get a point, I guess. And then the minute Penguin defends the single difficulty design or uses the terms approachability or accessibility, even just saying those words pretty much from here on out is a point towards
so those
Termite.
don't count. Okay.
And then but I'm framing it, I have to say the rules and not it's like, oh, you're going to like shoot the guy for saying the rules.
Yep.
Oh, I see how this is. So whoever gets it with the most points wins, or least violations, however you put it, and we'll see who wins. In the event of a tie, or in the event of neither of us scoring any points, then we both win, because the episode, in my opinion, will be better for it. So that's DLC.
And the audience wins.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wins. Win, 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 right?
Yep.
The DLC. So yes, that's a little different. If this ends up being fun, if this ends up being something we like, it's not like a discussion before our main topic. It's sort of like a discussion throughout the main topic, a challenge, a game that we're going to play throughout. So if you hear us go point, then it means one of us has violated it, and we might have to pause our discussion and, deliberate as to whether or not it counts. So hopefully it won't take up too much time, and we can carry on with our main discussion. Sound good? Everyone on board? And if this works, then we might do more kinds of things like this for DLC. If it doesn't work, then we won't ever do it again or bring it up ever again. All right.
There you go.
Awesome.
Done.
That's it. That's
You're probably
going
to get a point on our very last question, but we'll see.
We'll see.
If I can think of something more creative.
It's all about challenging us, right? This is so it's both for both of us that we don't just trot or plod over the same rote arguments, but instead we can be more creative with how we celebrate or criticize the games. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Whew. All right. So, main topic, we are doing a developer profile on FromSoftware. If you are not in the loop, if you do not know who FromSoftware are, we will explain it. If you do not know why we're talking about this, especially after having just done a developer profile on Guerrilla Games, we try to spread out our series a little bit, but Elden Ring's coming out, right? Elden Ring, their newest game, big title, collaboration with George R.R. Martin was announced like 4 years ago at the Game Awards. It's been in the zeitgeist of gaming for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's finally going to come out, and we will see whether it is going to be genre defining in the same way that Dark Souls was, or whether it will just be a okay follow-up to the series, or who knows, whether it will completely bomb and just not be ready for release. All those answers will be questioned by the end of this week. And so, but we're going to talk about
FromSoftware is, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're still 2 weeks away from when we're recording this.
Yeah. By the time this episode airs, I'm sure there's going to be either a preview article about Elden Ring, or the embargo will have lifted and there's straight up reviews. But there'll be more information.
There's been reviews. If you want to get early taste of the game, there were already reviews thanks to the closed network test. So lots of people got a chance to get their hands on an early sort of access situation, which I'm not going to say it's unheard of in the gaming industry, but it spoke to the level of, anytime a game's done, I feel like anytime a game has done something like that, it's come out pretty good, right? Like last one I can remember is like Devil May Cry 5 had a really solid demo that they just released to the public, like, I don't know, a couple months before the game came out, and the game was great, right? Like, it was impeccable. So there was nothing. It got great reviews and still has sort of a cult following to this day. So I feel like games that do that are great, and games that don't do things like that, Cyberpunk, are the ones that released in a bad state. So again, early impressions are already out there. So if you're curious, even if the review embargo hasn't lifted by the time this is up, you can go check it out. So cool. Yeah. All right. FromSoftware. Let's talk about it. Just the basics. Why don't you start off with the basics? Who are they? What games are they known for? And then we'll talk together about their history, their story.
They are a Japanese video game development company founded in November of 1986. They are a subsidiary of the Kadokawa Corporation. The company is best known for the Armored Core and Soul series, including the related games Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, and they are known for their high levels of difficulty, according to Wikipedia.
Yes.
Not me.
Yes. Objectively, according to Wikipedia.
Yes. I don't know what the Kadokawa Corp is, but so right now the current leadership is Hidetaka Miyazaki and Masanori Takeuchi, the senior managing director. So they are headquartered out of Tokyo. They came out with a series of games on the PlayStation 1 called Kingsfield, which I didn't even know was a thing until I did the research for this show.
Oh, really? Yeah,
and there's
that's
4 of
people
them.
always talk about how they really want Kingsfield remakes.
So there is a cult following, like that once Kingsfield
totally.
remade. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Well, the
Yep.
funny thing is you'll see screenshots coming up too, of course. But there's a sword from the original Kingsfield that has made it into like every Souls game except for Sekiro. And it's called the Moonlight Sword. It's either the variations are either the Moonlight Sword or the Moonlight Greatsword, and it's in all of them, and it harkens back to Kingsfield, I believe. And so it's always, so people are of course going to have their eyes out as to where and how to get it in Elden Ring, because it's going to probably show up. So cool. Yep, they were founded in 1986, as you mentioned.
They're my age.
Started, yeah, there you go. They started as a productivity software company. So productivity software like Excel or Microsoft Word, right? Exactly. So meant to design that kind of stuff, and pivoted into video games in 1994. Before 1994, obviously, when they started making Kingsfield, in 1994 when it was released. It was a launch title for the Japan, but only in Japan. And then the sequel, Kingsfield 2, would be Kingsfield 1 in North America, and that would come out a year later in 1995. So it's one of those like Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 6 situations where the Japanese version, I don't think it ever made it to North America. Could be wrong about that, so feel free to correct me, people. Termite, you want to tell people really quick where they can correct me if I'm wrong about any of these extraneous details?
The best place to reach out to us and interact with us is 80bitpodsmash.com. It's our landing website with which we have social media platform outlets, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter. We also have a Discord server. You can find links to all of those at 80bitpodsmash and tell us which Kingsfield game you want to see remade and how wrong Penguin is. If he is.
The extraneous details, if I am right. All right, history lesson continued. You never know what's going to come. You never know. It could pop up anywhere.
Oh,
the plug.
80bitpodsmash.com.
Yeah, do it. Oh. We need to. No, I'm getting too meta now. All right, 1997 would be the first entry in one of their other, like the other big franchise they were known for during this phase of gaming. 1997 would see Armored Core's release. And basically, to just kind of sum up the history here, they continue to make more RPGs in the early 2000s, including Lost Kingdoms, which is one of my favorite all-time GameCube cult games. It's one that I will claim hipster status on because it's super obscure and not really well known. And I didn't know it was made by FromSoft, so I'm like, that was one of the things that inspired me to want to do this episode. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about Lost Kingdom so bad. So we'll circle back around to that.
Yep.
Though they were making RPGs, continue to make RPGs, they would shift away from that to mostly focusing on their mech games. And then they would also do some licensing of games in 2005 under the banner Another Century's Episode. And then they were also known in 2005, that same year, for developing a creation kit for students to make games on the PSP. And it was called Adventure Player. You want to comment on any of that before we move on to the big ones?
FromSoftware made a ton of games across a whole bunch of platforms. But one distinction I do want to highlight here is that, and we will get here when we get to the history, is what Taka Miyazaki, who is now the president, was actually involved with was a very small subset of what FromSoftware has done.
Oh, yeah.
But Armored Core and Dark Demon Souls were his flavor, and those were the only things I ever knew that came out of FromSoftware, which is kind of a testament to how his work made FromSoftware like go into like the stratosphere of popularity in the gaming industry.
Absolutely. We're going to circle back around to Miyazaki too. Yeah. So we'll get around because this is one of those few episodes where the history of one of the founding members is as interesting or more interesting. Not founding members, but one of the members of the organization has got a history that's arguably more interesting than the company itself. So we'll definitely circle around back to that. Cool. All right. So 2009, then Taka Miyazaki, as aforementioned, would lead the PS3 game that would become Demon Souls. And then it would generate a cult following, though critical flop. It had generated a cult following most specifically in the West. And that's a key point here because it was not very popular in Japan, despite all their other games, for the most part, being very popular in Japan. 2011 would then see the follow-up to Demon Souls, Dark Souls. Needed to be a whole new kind of continuity because Demon Souls was a partnership with Sony. And so Sony owned that IP. And so they had to make Dark Souls, which was supposed to be Demon Souls 2, but it had to be its own thing. Doesn't matter because it would be the title that would basically put them into the history of gaming.
Yeah,
So
like modern popularity. Yep.
yeah, pretty much. Yep. Basically
Mhm.
was their single defining title. Then throughout the
So
rest
much
of the
so they
2000,
remade it as a launch title, Blue Point
yeah,
for PS5.
yeah.
Like
Well,
that's
that
how.
was Demon Souls. That was the
Not Dark
cultish,
Souls. I
not
got you.
Dark Souls. Though it did get a
Right.
remaster, pretty solid one too.
It did. Yeah.
So the rest of that decade then would see, of course, 2 additional Dark Souls titles, a spin-off-ish title called Bloodborne, and then Sekiro, which was more of a spiritual successor, and then, of course, finally leading up to the release of Elden Ring this year. So I do want to talk about in 2014, as a result of the success of Dark Souls, Miyazaki was made president of the company. And then I want to really quickly circle back around and talk about Miyazaki. So I'll try to blast through this really quick, but I think it's super interesting, like I said. So Miyazaki himself basically would, in his early years, he used to read books that were like way above his age, and he didn't understand all the words. So he would like fill in all the details that he didn't understand. So he would go on to cite that as part of his inspiration for a lot of his game design ideas. So I think that's kind of interesting. He would then, obviously grow up and go to college. When he graduated, though, he did not go into gaming immediately. He started working in account management for Oracle, which is like
Yeah.
database software.
It's Java
And
now.
oh, it's a Java. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, yeah. In 2001, he loved the game Ico, which we talked about in our best games list for that year.
Mhm.
And he loved that game so much that he considered getting into gaming. And at that age, he was like 29. So FromSoftware just happened to be one of the few developers that would actually hire him at that age because it was
Yeah,
just sort
he
of
had
perceived
a
of. Mhm.
he had a degree in social science from KO University, which is not a technical degree at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like his parents wouldn't even let him play video games, so he spent his time playing instead playing game books and tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
Because he couldn't whatever desire
So
he
this isn't a
had
guy
he
that was like
wanted.
in gaming. He just but he loved it so much.
Isn't it crazy?
That
He wasn't able to play
it's really
games
crazy.
at all, and he wasn't even able to study computer science or gaming in college all the way through until he's 29 years old, falls in love with Ico. I guess he's finally an adult at that point and can do his own gaming. And then he's
Sure, of
like,
course.
I love this so much. Who would hire me? And somehow FromSoftware grabbed him,
They
and
did, yep.
he began working as a game planner on Armored Core Last Raven. So midway through the development cycle, and then he later directed
Absolutely.
Armored Core 4. So he must have put a pretty strong performance out there
Absolutely,
for FromSoftware to make him a developer of a game a year after they hired him. Not even. Yeah.
Yep. So this partnership between Sony and FromSoftware happened to make a fantasy RPG, action RPG. So that that was happening. That was a thing that was happening apart from Miyazaki's involvement. He was so interested in that project that he requested reassignment from the Armored Core series to work on that. And then this quote here, I decided to include the entire quote. He said, "I figured if I could find a way to take control of the game, I could turn it into anything I wanted. Best of all, if my ideas failed, nobody would care. It was already a failure." I just think that's such an awesome mentality where he's like, I just wanted to be in charge, right? Like I wanted to get my ideas into a game. And if everybody hates it, then so what? It was like the project was already failing and Sony was already displeased with it. So, and then to go on, the game was considered a flop at launch. I remember reading a quote that the president of Sony, after playing it for the first time, said, "What is this garbage? This is awful," and threw the controller down. It was super ticked off. So it's such a fascinating thing that this
It's
series
still reviewed well though.
It did actually reviewed very well. IGN for as much
9 out of 10s down the board across all the different outlets at the time. Even
Right.
Metacritic gave it an 89.
Yeah, for all the flack that people give IGN and game journalists for the ongoing discussion about FromSoftware's games, for as much flack as they get, they IGN gave them a higher rating than Skyrim when it came out around, I think, in the same year or around the same time. So I don't know, it just goes to show that game journalists do not deserve the hate that you give them for
it's definitely true.
For them. They have a pretty good handle on things even when the players don't. So anyways, it did, like I said, it developed a cult following outside of Japan, which pretty much made FromSoftware interested in continuing the series and allowing Miyazaki another shot. He would go on to make Dark Souls, which would be a massive success, and as a result, Miyazaki was promoted to president. And when I say massive success, I mean genre. Like, it created a new genre pretty much. Everybody started mimicking this game.
Mm-hmm.
It was before its time. But I mean, not before its time. It was at the right time, right? It was at the time. Demon Souls was before its time. And then Dark Souls was like perfectly timed to completely transform the industry in many ways. So we'll circle back around to that. So anyways, I do want to talk one more thing about Miyazaki. It was unprecedented in Japan. Like, in that culture, it was unprecedented for someone to change careers, go into an entirely new industry, and then become president of a company in that industry within a 10-year span. Like, I mean, that's unprecedented in most countries, I would say. Even in America, it's like, we have a lot of supposed upward mobility, but like, I still think it's really rare for that kind of success story. So at the age of like 29 to basically like completely change careers and then become in charge, really, really impressive guy, which is why I want to talk about it. So he follows a principle of game design called total direction, meaning that he takes full control of the game direction and full accountability in all decisions. He aligns the team with his vision by discussing the philosophy and concepts with them. He usually writes dialogues, item descriptions, design level layouts, creates the story and mythology, gives instructions for bosses, enemies, and areas, and even designs some of the bosses and fights encounters himself. So he's not just like giving orders and make it happen, right? He is like making choices, and I think
that
it
must
shows.
be super difficult to work with.
It is.
Like, unwavering.
Right, but it depends on his personality, right? Yeah, from all accounts, he strikes me as a dude who's like super humble and totally willing to like accept input.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
And I bet you that. Well, I don't know, right? Like, so you never know. You never know the kind of person he is. But my understanding is that, like, I don't know, it shows, right? It definitely pays off in the product. And my understanding is that the team works really well with him. And you can tell that by the fact that Dark Souls 2, which was not designed by him, like, what didn't have his total direction involvement, the game still like fits. There's like differences, obviously, but it still fits. And that just goes to show like how well this team works together, that even when their director isn't exercising his total direction, they still come out with a pretty good title that still feels like a title from their company. So
yeah,
it's fascinating. So, all right.
Yes.
Whew. That's it. That's the history. That's their story. Why don't you tell me about your favorite FromSoftware game? This is one of my developers.
This is hilarious. I've never actually played anything from them. So I have on my shelf some copies of Armored Core, and I don't own any of the Demon Souls, Sekiro, any Blood. I guess I own Bloodborne because it was on PlayStation Plus Network, PS Plus, whatever, free. The collection, but I don't have one because I have zero experience with any of them.
Yeah, I can't.
I rented Armored Core like when I was a kid. No, I never played Lost Kingdoms either.
You love Lost Kingdoms, yeah.
I probably would.
I gotta lend you.
Yeah, and so like I played Armored Core, and it did not grab me at all. And I thought in my adult life now, I attribute that to the general
and colorless. I was looking up some gameplay of them because I was curious about it. There's rumors they're making a new Armored Core game.
Yeah, which one did you find?
I watched like a history of the progress of them, right? So gameplay shots of each one throughout history. Yeah. And I think I finally landed on whichever the most recent one was to see what like the most recent like what it looked like, right? And its most modern incarnations. And it looked fine if you're into like mech combat games but otherwise just outside looking in, just kind of colorless, and not a lot of their games have a lot of color, right? So that's not, but the Souls games, that's like a feature, right? Like it's meant to be a part of the world.
Embraced it.
I don't know. I'm more right. It was embraced, but an Armored Core just feels like part and parcel of like what it is, right? Where it's just like, okay, it's not a design direction. It just feels like it was like, oh, we just didn't even think to add color to this franchise. It's fine.
Yep. In the same vein that I played like a Final Fantasy game and a Zelda title when I was too young and didn't really understand them and love them now, I attribute Armored Core to the same thing. We'd rented the first one because we kind of dabbled in MechWarrior as a kid and enjoyed that. And then Armored Core we thought was like going to be like that, but it was nothing like that. It was way like not. All I remember is like there being tons of individual parts for all the mechs, and it was like super deep systems and just overcomplicated, and the combat didn't make any sense, and it wasn't fun to play. And that's my experience with FromSoftware.
Sure, my understanding is that the combat's impeccably designed, right? Like that they're
even in Armored Core,
like Yeah, even in Armored Core,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
that is just sort of a feature. And honestly, I can see that where it's like it can be complex at times, but it's all like it's got a lot of like possibility and like nuance to the combat, which again just speaks to the level of consistency that this developer is working with. That despite Miyazaki's clear like auteur status, he's not the only one that is responsible for the quality of their products. Like I want to highlight
Mhm.
that. And I think Armored Core is an example of that. And I think the same is true with Lost Kingdoms as well, in my experience. So I'm obviously I'm going to say my favorite is Bloodborne. To no one's surprise, it's on my top games of all times list for so many reasons. So many reasons. But I've talked a lot about Bloodborne, so I do want to take some time as sort of an honorable mention to highlight Lost Kingdoms. It was
Sweet.
released as Rune in Japan, so you might be familiar with it by that title, listener. But Lost Kingdoms for the GameCube, basically when I found out that they made it, I was like connecting the dots in my head and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. It's got that feel of the lone wanderer in a world that's ruined by some event that happened before the events of the game. And you, as the lone wanderer, have to kind of restore the world, and that there's all these NPCs, and something always feels there's not all these NPCs. Sorry, there's very few NPCs, but each one that you encounter, it always kind of feels a little weird, a little off. It's a little bit more whimsical, definitely more colorful. Came out for the GameCube, incredible. Basically has this whole card base. It's like a Souls game mixed with a card-based combat system, like a deck building. A really, really interesting system, really, really well-crafted game that was like it's so unique. I've never seen anything like it. I'm sure there are games that like mimicked it, but it didn't really like it had a really cult following and didn't have a big success. So like I never knew anybody else who had played it ever. Like I can't think of a single person I've ever been like, you ever play Lost Kingdoms on the GameCube? And I
Yeah.
genuinely forgot about the franchise, but I have the second one. I don't have the first one. I think I rented it, but I own the second one, and it's not. I don't think the second one's as good as the first one, but it's still pretty good and it's still basically the same
Did
idea.
you
So
want the second one because of your positive experience with the first one?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. As soon as I
Okay.
found out the second one was coming out. Also, the girl's hotter, but whatever.
Oh, the one on
Some
the
middle
cover, right?
schooler. Yeah. The first one you play as like a princess, and the second one you play as like some kind of vagabond girl. And honestly, looks aside, I liked the story. I felt more compelled playing like the princess girl because it was her kingdom, right? And she was trying to restore it.
Oh, I
I didn't
didn't
feel
know
that
that.
same
Okay.
connection to the story in the first one. Yeah, talk about strong female protagonists, man.
Sweet.
Games like loaded with them.
Awesome.
So really, really good series. I highly recommend. Well, I'd recommend people get their hands on it, but they're again super rare and super expensive. Though I
Yeah.
do want to find myself a copy of the first one because I adored it so much. So, but really great game. So, yep, that is my answer for that. As much as objectively, I like Bloodborne better. I get objectively, subjectively, I like Bloodborne better. I do think Lost Kingdoms is worth a mention with this section. So, all right, innovation. Talk to me. How has FromSoftware brought innovation to the gaming industry?
I actually do have an answer for this.
You do.
Yes, from what I understand of the Demons, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc., from what y'all have told me, what reviews have said, what people in the gaming industry at large say, is that the player themselves is brought into the game. And what the game is trying to convey is it extends beyond just what's presented to the player. It extends beyond the environmental storytelling, and it extends beyond the combat. The player is made to feel the things the game is trying to convey by
Mm-hmm.
how there are struggles in combat. You do die, respawn, what you lose, the stakes, the sense of dread, the lone wanderer, as you'd mentioned, very unique to the From Software formula. And to me, that is an innovation of kind of, for lack of a better analogy, breaking the fourth wall and
Sure.
making the
Immersion for
player
sure.
like there was a little bit of that in Persona 5 with part of the plot where like the player is brought in the same direction as the protagonist, and then you're brought into the same direction as the protagonist when things go crazy. So that's really cool. And when it happened, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm experiencing this exactly the way the story is making the protagonist experience it. And to me, that's very unique. Now, in a Japanese RPG that borderlines a visual novel, like that's one way. But when it's done mechanically through every single minute of the gameplay and through every facet the player can interact with the game through sound and music and combat and mechanics, right? So yes, that does translate to difficulty, but it's a very unique thing from for From Software to do. It's fundamentally
Absolutely.
baked into the Demon Dark Souls formula.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how that works with like the Armored Core games. I do feel like they're kind
Yeah.
of the same based on my tiny experience with them.
I can't speak to it, right? I can only
Yeah,
speak to
I just don't
the last
know.
10 years. Yeah. I'll
But
say that. I
that's
mean, the big thing is, again, if we're talking about the Souls-likes, the Soulsborne games that they made, I mean, I did say they kind of started a genre, right? And you know, there's some caveats that, like, is, you know, we've talked before, is Souls like a genre, or is it more of like a genre modifier, right? And we could talk about that all day. We're not going to. Instead, I'll just say that, like, they did start something. They started a trend that hadn't existed, right? Leading up to 2009 and Demon Souls, like, games were kind of getting easier and easier. They were getting more, you know, again, like, kind of like mindless in their mechanics, right? Like, it wasn't talk about like that, you know, comparison of Skyrim, right? Like, there's a point in Skyrim where you just dominate everything and you don't have to think about it. Like, you can just dump points into blank and you're eventually going to become a god. You don't have to like really think about what you're doing or consider or make choices. You just got to go one direction and stick with it, right? And then eventually you become a god in the world, no matter what difficulty you're playing at. And that was kind of like the zeitgeist of gaming in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and Dark Souls broke the industry out of that, and I think that's why it was so refreshing at the time and why people started to mimic it. And then once it became popular for that reason, I think then people started to really pay attention to the immaculate design, and I really think that's what they brought. So as much as, yes, they created a genre or a subgenre or whatever, yes, they made gaming, you know, brought that level of challenge back into gaming that had been kind of lost for a while. I really think that it's more the immaculate design of their systems that people started to mimic. It was that thoughtful. And again, like, From Software is great at taking disparate elements from other games and making them into something that feels unique. But nothing about their games necessarily taken on its own is unique. There are plenty of dark fantasy games out there. Their targeting system is ripped right from Zelda. They even admit the Z, like, it's basically a rip of the Z targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Their combat mechanics are no different than any other third-person action RPG of the last, 20, 30 years. And even things like the picking up your corpse and getting your losing your experience / currency, like that, all plenty of games have done. Diablo did that forever ago. So it's like they're anything that you could identifiably say, like, oh, this is part of the Souls-like genre. It's like none of it's on its own like a unique thing that they came up with, but it's that pulling together that disparate elements and making something that, again, taken as a whole, is then considered a unique thing. They're masters of it because they make good games, and that, I think, is something that is a through line throughout their history. Despite all the other releases and things that we're not familiar with, like, I'm pretty confident that in my little bit of experience of From Software games before the Soul series would speak to that level of quality. And I think that I still get that sense from you, even though you didn't jive with Armored Core, you still seem to admit that it was still pretty well designed from a gameplay point of view. So,
and awesome. Another point of innovation that I want to talk about is Demon Souls multiplayer component with the Phantom system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm now reading on Wikipedia, which is crazy. The multiplayer mechanics were inspired by Miyazaki's experience of driving on a hillside after heavy snow when cars ahead stopped and started slipping back. They were deliberately bumped into and pushed up the hill by the cars behind them, thus allowing the traffic to flow. Unable to give his appreciation to the drivers before leaving the area, he wondered whether the last person in line had made it to their destination, thinking that he would probably never meet those people again. So there's like this asynchronous multiplayer system that was implemented in Demon Souls that I've heard about that sounded kind of fascinating. And so much that there's a boss called the Old Monk, which is like the twist after many players had learned, like, why does this boss always change their tactics? Like, I can't do the same thing to beat this boss. It's because you had summoned another player.
Yes.
And it was actually a PvP fight.
So good. You can opt out of that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Basically, by you just turn off. You fight that boss in offline mode, and it's an NPC that does have the same tactics and is predictable, but it's still a fascinating thing. It's worth.
I don't know how any of that was handled in the remake, but the PS3 version, the OG one,
same.
It is the same. Okay,
it is the same. Yeah, there's actually a trophy. There's a trophy related to it where you have to kill someone as the Old Monk, basically.
Okay,
by playing as the Old Monk. Yeah. So
how does that work as playing?
Well,
like,
no,
are you in the middle of
you're
playing
not
a game and you just get prompted, like, someone's trying to summon you, go get it? Or how does that work?
Well, so there's like a flagging system basically. Like you flag for PvP in general to invade, right? You basically want to invade, and there are certain conditions that enable people to be invaded. In which case, if you have flagged for invasion, you're going to be summoned for you actually, yeah, a prompt comes up on your screen saying you're being summoned to another world as an invader, and it's more likely that you're going to invade someone in an area that you're in. So if you flag for invasion in, the Tower of Latria, then you're probably going to invade someone in the Tower of Latria, though there are exceptions to that. Basically, in that same tower, if you flag after a certain bonfire, so to speak, then you're likely to be summoned as the monk. Now, you're not the monk himself. You are still your player and have all of your spells and abilities available to you. The monk is basically just an NPC that like summons you in and puts his helmet over your head. And if you win, then if the first time you win, you actually get that helmet. And it's a powerful spellcaster helmet, so I wanted it, of course, so I killed some poor schmuck. But yep, that's it. Then you just basically, and that's basically just like any other invasion, just takes place in this one area, and you have like a boss health bar instead of or your regular health bar.
That's
But it's
crazy.
not that much different than, like, you're not that much stronger or weaker than you were
And
otherwise.
how many
so.
games have ever copied that mechanic?
There's, I mean, a lot of Soulslikes that genuinely are mimicking. Like, we'll do some like an invasion system like that. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, I know that like Death Stranding has the asynchronous messages because you can also leave messages for people and stuff like that. And the rating system, like you could rate the messages too. So that all comes from Dark Souls, and that's in Death Stranding as recently as that game. So there's definitely
Death
there's
Stranding
definitely
has
elements.
the like societal banding together asynchronous multiplayer because you don't fight each other and you don't affect the BTs in that game. So that's all like the same kind of idea, but turned into a co-op mode, which is cool in and of itself. And that's Hideo Kojima and Miyazaki need to get together and make a game, apparently.
Yeah, or never get together because they would both conflict and fight probably, and it would be an awful game as a result. I do think that it's worth mentioning, as a result of that asynchronous multiplayer, like you were talking about, with that idea of like people helping each other, nudging each other up the hill. There's that as much as I've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. The innovation, since we're still talking about innovation, it's that idea of that sort of dual feeling. And the game is meant to make you feel ambivalent by the definition of the word ambivalent, meaning you feel two things at once. Yes, you're in this hopeless world of all these crazy monsters, and you are but a poor schmuck with a weak sword and terrible armor, and you have to overcome these challenges on your own, seemingly. But again, the game constantly reminds you that there are others going through that same thing. And so there's this sort of uniting of the community through that asynchronous multiplayer. Sometimes it's as simple as a message warning you about an ambush ahead. Sometimes it's as elaborate as a summon sign where you can actually summon someone who can come in and help you fight a boss. That is part of the game. And most people in the community see no shame in summoning help for boss fights. It's built in there as, the release mechanic. If you're having too much trouble, you can always summon someone for help. There are costs to it, but it's available to you. And there, again, most people consider no shame in doing it. So there's like literal help you can get. And then again, just the idea that like the game is constantly reminding you of it's worth playing online because you get you can see the phantoms, right? Throughout the game, you'll always see these little phantoms. And those are other players that are like doing something right now in that moment alongside you. So the game it's this weird mix of like hope and hopelessness, of like insurmountable challenge, and then the unity that comes from knowing that people are going through the same thing. It's an incredibly empathetic experience when you consider it in that light.
Yeah, that's innovative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, what is a recognizably FromSoftware thing? This question was originally worded as like, what's like a design? It basically is. What's a design decision? It could be as simple as like a UI element that's always in their games, a sound effect, the Holy Moonlit Greatsword, or the Moonlit Greatsword.
Good examples of that. Yeah,
that's a recognizably. Yep, that's a good example of this kind of thing. This question. So, what is something that you think is a recognizably FromSoftware thing?
I put, again, lack of experience from actually me playing them, but from what I've read and gathered from everyone, is extreme precision and tight gameplay. Everything from Armored Core through Dark Souls, there's always a lot going on. So there's like Sekiro added the whole stealth aspect of combat combined with the already existing guard, parry, dodge thing from like Demons and Dark Souls. Armored Core had the modification combinations of builds on your mech. Elden Ring is doing an open world now. So like they take all of these different like facets of things and put them together in like this ridiculously high quality like polish, weaving all these various systems together. And then the gameplay itself is also like what the player is doing on the controller is also very precise and tight. Like the timing is down to the frames. There's like this
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Japanese polish feel to them that I don't know how to articulate. More than it's hard to put words to, but like Metal Gear Solid feels this way. Some Final Fantasies feel this way.
Yeah.
There's like a Japanese sheen that you just don't get from the West. It's impossible. I don't understand. I can't put words to it, but there's a combine all of that together, and then like you've got a From Software title.
I think that so to elaborate on what you're talking about, there, there's this term when it seems like when people want to avoid the term Soulslike in the industry when talking about their games, this term I've heard pop up called thoughtful combat. I think I heard it first in Jedi Fallen Order, maybe, and then I heard it again in reference to God of War, and it's that it's so. I like to say that Devil May Cry I feel like Devil May Cry was maybe the last game that really like revolutionized action RPGs combat and basically made everything about hack and slash combos. And the difficulty comes from knowing how to pull off the combos in a very frenetic, fast-paced action environment. Dark Souls, I think, Dark Souls and Demon Souls slowed that all down and said, instead of focusing more on the combos itself, let's focus more on like when to attack, when not to attack, knowing that, of course, you have to follow through with each attack and there's punishment if you do it at the wrong time. So it's more about standing back and observing the patterns and then attacking at the right time. And that's again, it's now no longer a From Software thing because so many developers like have sort of mimicked it, right? To the point where it's like, again, games that aren't even trying to be challenging, difficult From Software games are still including that feel to the combat. And so I referenced both Jedi Fallen Order and God of War as some examples. And again, it's funny because God of War was originally mimicking Devil May Cry with the whole combo system, frenetic combo system. And then the next time that they would overhaul their combat system, they were mimicking, at least on some level, Dark Souls. I think that's kind of a notable, like, again, one of the best franchises of all time has sort of always built their combat off of like a highly popular action RPG at the time. And so I think it's really impressive that Dark Souls managed to like impress them so much that it changed their design philosophy on a tried and true studio like Santa Monica. But I'm going to say the recognizable From Software thing as opposed to the holy, I keep calling it the holy Moonlit Greatsword because that's what it was in Bloodborne. As opposed to the holy, I keep saying holy. It's not holy. The Moonlit Sword or Moonlit Greatsword. Dang, I have to cut so much of that. As opposed to that, the idea of like the lone wanderer, that lonely universe, that sort of like feeling of like sort of oppressiveness, even in the videos I've watched of Armored Core, I do feel like that's present, where it's just like, and armor, oh my gosh, talk about like just I feel like everyone's encumbered by armor, and that's again like it just feels like they really designed the idea of like they have a really good like identifiable armor, like even just looking at the similarities between like the Armored Core mech design and like the armor that the knights are wearing in the Souls series. It just has sort of a very, very From Software feel to it. But yeah, those are kind of probably my answers. But I mean, if you ever get around to playing Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, you'll notice just simple things, sound effects, like when you trigger a checkpoint, it's got this like whoosh sound that always feels the same, and the death sound like you died, right? Like it's all very like the same in all those games, in that kind of line and series of games that make it feel like a unified design choice. So cool.
What about like the bonfire system? Apparently, like Tomb Raider, the remakes, the reboots have taken from the Soulsborne type genre. Isn't that a From Software thing?
Definitely. I don't know how it is in their other games, and I can't recall if there's a similar system in. I want to say there was a kind of save point system of some kind in Lost Kingdoms, but I don't recall off the top of my head if there is or not. And I have no idea about Armored Core. I get the feeling that Armored Core is less of like you're exploring through a world instead of like you're doing missions, right? Like more like Devil May Cry, and like you load into a mission and then you play it until it's done. And if you screw up, you have to start over. I don't know. I just don't know because I never played it. But yeah, that bonfire system's in all the games, right? And it's just not always called bonfires. In Bloodborne, they're lanterns. and I don't remember what they are in Sekiro. So
Mhm.
I've only played it once. It's been a while. And then I know they're going to be called Sites of Lost Grace and Elden Ring, but it's the same idea, right? You go to a spot, it's recognizable, you can always count on there being one after a boss usually, and then there's usually one in front of not too much trouble. Although, did I tell you I did abandon my Dark Souls 2 playthrough as a result of
You
a
did.
particular bonfire that was in front of like a gauntlet before a boss that's not an easy boss? I was like, like the difficulty spike went from being like, okay, this is manageable. It's still hard, but it's manageable, to being just like, I don't want to do this right now. There are other contexts in which I would push through it, but right now I have plenty of other things I want to play, and I was like, this is not a good time for this moment in Dark Souls 2. So,
Yeah.
but yes, it's that most of the time they're in front of like a shortcut or something that lets you get back to the boss without too much grief. So there's kind of, predictable points, bonfire system. So yeah, I mean, I know other games kind of take from that. I'd never considered Tomb Raider though, that system, but that's very similar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to like, you go there and you level up your character. Like you do that in Dark Souls for sure. Manage sort of your stuff there. So awesome.
I mean, Jedi Fallen Order, that takes
Yep.
the same, like the prayer spots or whatever you call them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, here's the question that our DLC might finally get brought back to the play here. What would you like to see more or less of from Software in the future?
To avoid losing our DLC fight.
You can do it. You can do it.
The
I
most
believe in
creative thing I can think of now, and echoing the sense of Phil Spencer having bought Activision Blizzard's entire line of IP, wanting to resurrect old IP. I will go with, what do I want to see from Software in the future? Resurrect these old IP.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that they could. Like Kingsfield is fascinating to me. Just the little bit of like. When I looked at in researching this, I saw some YouTube videos of gameplay, and it feels like it's got that Dungeons and Dragons kind of fantasy, first person Skyrim. Like it's like the Elder Scrolls meets Bloodborne, and it looks awesome. And like,
it's
that'd
just
be cool. I want to get in that.
No, I'm into it. I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like a remake of Kingsfield not only is, or either a remake or a new one, is not only something that the fans want, but like under Miyazaki's direction, I feel like it would be good. And here's the thing. Just because Miyazaki's making it doesn't have to mean it has to be that challenging Souls-like formula. And that's going to be my answer there. Like, it doesn't... My answer is, I love the challenge of the Souls games. And I can't say much more without
violating
without losing the DLC. So I'll just say I love it, but it's not necessarily the only thing that they've got going for them as a company, right? Like, it's not the only thing that Miyazaki is good at as a director. So yes, bring Kingsfield back and give it difficulty sliders. That's fine with me. Do the same thing with Armored Core, or you know what? Do something else entirely, and just make it clear, like, you're not. I guess they're not. I hope the community wouldn't see that as betraying their fans. As long as they continue to make Souls-like games, and in that line, I would love to see, like, again, I would love to see Bloodborne, but with like pirates instead, like that gameplay, that kind of level of stuff, but with a different genre.
Mm-hmm.
I would be thrilled with like a pirate game, a pirate Souls game. So yes, I do want to see more Souls games. That's fine. But I would also love to see them bring that back. And oh my gosh, I would just die for a Lost Kingdoms 3 right about now. Doing this whole episode has made me just so freaking nostalgic. I might have to pull up my GameCube and just spend all night playing Lost Kingdoms 2.
Do it. It would be cool to see like Lost Kingdoms 1 and 2 bundled together and re-released on the Switch, and then that drives hype for the third one. That'd be sweet.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're hurting me. You're hurting me. Can Sony lease Bluepoint out to Nintendo to do Lost Kingdoms 1 and 2 remakes?
I wonder who owns the IP.
I don't know. They only ever came out on GameCube, so who knows? They did release Dark Souls 1 remaster on.
I mean, it was published by Activision, so theoretically Microsoft could bring it back, right? Activision owns the IP.
It would break my heart if it came out on anything other than the Switch, though. That just would kill
just because it came out on Nintendo originally?
Because it was the GameCube, yeah. Like, I mean, it's okay if it comes out on the Xbox and on PC as well, but please, just like, it kills me to think about that. So I do want to, as a closing thought here, what do you think? As a closing thought, what are your thoughts on, do you think Sony has any interest in, and From Software, do you think they would have any interest in a partnership or even a straight out purchase as like, what would you think about From Software becoming a Sony PlayStation studio?
I mean, I think it's feasible. I'm trying to remember because everything that I've known from software is they're pretty third party. They haven't had a whole lot of things, but they do
And their
have
one experience of first party with Sony in particular was one
they got
that was
Bloodborne,
not.
right?
Oh yeah, no, they did. You're right. I shouldn't say one, the single one. Yeah, no, that
And they
Bloodborne I
made
forgot about.
Deracine on the PlayStation 4 VR as a PlayStation 4 VR exclusive.
Mhm.
Outside of
Well,
that,
but
I'm scrolling through their history.
was
Huh?
Demon Souls was their other Sony exclusive. There's actually a
That was
really
Blue Point. Oh, you mean back on
no,
PS3?
the remake. I mean
Right.
the PS3 one. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and
you're right.
it did seem like that From Software somehow got burned by that exchange to the point where they had to, kind of soft reboot this entire series. They were planning on doing Demon Souls 2, instead turned it into Dark Souls with a whole new different continuity, though it's basically the same game, let's be real. But they had to kind of change the IP entirely because of whatever arrangement they had with Sony, and it seemed like it burned them a bit. But then again, you're right, they did end up still working together for Bloodborne. There's supposedly another Sony exclusive in the pipeline, but then again, there's also supposedly another Microsoft exclusive with them in the pipeline. We also know Sony invested the 2% market share value in them or whatever. So it seems like they're being courted. It seems like they really want to, and I do think they're a better fit for Sony, only because not only as another Japanese developer, with Team Japan shutting down too, it's like they kind of need a solid Japanese win. I do feel like From Software would be a really good fit for Sony, but I don't know. I think Sony wants From Software more than From Software wants Sony. I think From Software might be whatever, we're happy to be third party and to continue to do so.
Right, because from Software's perspective, they get the entire Xbox ecosystem, the entire PC ecosystem, and the entire Sony ecosystem. So it's like, okay, you've sold 114 million PS5s or PS4s, whatever. Cool. I'm not going to limit and turn away from
they have no reason
tens of millions of people that are almost hundreds of millions of people combined on Xbox and PC.
Sure.
And
unless Sony can offer them a deal that they can't refuse, right? And then with Activision being owned by, Sekiro being owned by Activision, it's like that would be a whole franchise they couldn't do anymore if they went first party with Sony, or at least it would take a lot of work to make that happen. So it's like, they'd have to abandon franchises anyways, so might as well stay neutral. I do think the best thing for From Software is to stay neutral and third party. Right. But the best thing for Sony, I would say, is to try to get them at all costs, right? And I don't know who I want to win in that fight, because as being invested in the Sony infrastructure, it wouldn't affect me at all. I have no desire to play those games on PC or on Xbox. But I also feel for the Xbox From Software fans who, they already missed out on Bloodborne and Demon Souls. So it's a tough one. It's a toss up there for me. So
yeah, and that goes back to From Software was acquired by Kadokawa in May 2014. And what you were alluding to actually happened on February 5th, which is very recent to us, 2 days ago. The Sony Corporation formed a new financial partnership that gives part ownership of Japanese media conglomerate that owns From Software and developer behind Dark Souls and Bloodborne. And that's that 2% stake in Kadokawa.
Oh, really? I thought that happened a while ago.
That was last year.
But you're saying it
2021.
Happened, last year.
A year ago. It happened a year ago.
Okay. Yep. Okay, I was going to say, I was like, what? Am I a future person? Am I
yeah, it was a year ago. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So awesome. Yeah, you're right. That looks like they're already kind of making deals along those lines. And just looking at the history of From Software,
I feel like they're being courted on both sides, right? And if they're smart, they play both sides off each other, right? Because Microsoft supposedly announced that they had an exclusive in the works for Xbox with From Software at the helm. So it's, and again, they have an association with Activision, so I'm sure there were inroads made there too. So yeah, I feel like they can continue to, they're super hot right now for good reasons, and they can continue to milk that. Then again, having the full backing of a company like Sony or Microsoft would also enable them to have resources that they probably don't have as a AA to AAA third-party developer.
And then it's a cash payout of when someone buys a company, it's like Sony dumps all the money they would be backing up a truck full of cash to From Software's parking lot and be like, come to Sony. And then From Software has to do the numbers of okay, what's the market share, sales, potential between Microsoft and PC versus that truckload of cash in my parking lot from Sony. You got to do the math and figure out risk over reward and all that stuff. So, yeah.
And they are, I'm sure they are, but man, it's going to be interesting with the land grab that we're currently seeing right now with developers. Again, Sony announced they're we've got more acquisitions in the pipeline. I'm I wonder if one of those is From Software. So, there's so many possibilities. So it's going to be interesting to see where they are in 5 years. So, and it's going to be interesting to see Elden Ring, right? Like, are we, like I said, sort of, it's right now this big unknown. Is it going to revolutionize open world gaming? Are we going to see a slew of open world Souls-likes now, right? Because one of the current defining features of Souls-likes is that sort of narrow, very curated, like a very linear, almost. It's linear without being linear, in the same way that a Metroidvania is kind of linear without being linear. So now opening that up and having this big massive world and mounts, and you'll be able to place your checkpoints in the open world now, and with lots of emphasis on exploration. It's again, it's going to feel more like Breath of the Wild, I think, than it's going to feel like Dark Souls or Metroid, right? So yeah, we'll see it again. Is that going to just be like, okay, this is like a new flavor of Souls-like, or is it going to be like, this is now the new direction, a whole new genre in and of itself, right? We'll see. So I think it has the possibility to be either of those things, and I'm excited about it. So it's going to be the first one you're going to play because you've already put your money where your mouth is. My mouth is.
My $5.
I pre-ordered it.
Like, yes, I could cancel it and get my $5 back. It's the bare minimum.
Could.
Yeah.
What would it take for you to cancel it? Would it take like awful reviews, like after the embargo lifts? Just like,
I don't know. I think I'm in. Like, I don't know.
I mean, really, it's already got reviews, right? Like,
yeah. I don't
you
really
at least
have
know
any
that first area from
confident.
the CNT. Yeah. Well, you know that I'll be playing it with you whenever you fire it up. So, in fact, we have a plan. We have a plan to get the Mountain Dew, the alcohol Baja Blast. But, all right, we're rambling now, so I feel like this is a good place to close. What do you, listener, think about FromSoftware? Love them, hate them, never touch them, never intend to, or are you a diehard fan and want to get on board with Penguin and Termite on Elden Ring's release and drink Mountain Dew with us and play Elden Ring? All those thoughts and more, we want to hear from you, and you can share them with us at
80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with links to all of our social media outlets, as well as our Discord server, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, and we also have a Twitch channel that is underutilized at the moment, but we would love to have as many followers on Twitch as possible, and we're still strategizing about what we might want to do in the streaming world with Twitch. So if you go ahead and drop the follow now, it would not cost you a dime. We don't have subscription tiers. We don't have a Patreon. It's all free. Everything comes by way of our altruism and generosity. No. We love doing this. This is a passion project for us. This is what we do. If you are new to us and you're finding us through like YouTube or any other audio outlet, we do have links to all of our podcasting platforms at 80bit Podsmash as well. The hotly contested Spotify, as well as Apple Play, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. If RSS feed is there, you can throw us into any app. We get no sponsorship money. We are not paid by anyone. We have no ads. So everything is free because we love doing this, and we are still trying to grow. So please help us do so. Leave us a review, share us with your friends, give us a like, a share, a follow, etc. That would be wonderful if you do. And with that, what are we going to talk about next week?
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm proud of us. We won. Everyone wins. Everyone wins the DLC tonight. I think it was touch and go. There was almost a point where I think I was actually surprised that it was me who almost began to overly praise the single difficulty design. And but you did good. I'm proud of you, kid. So I think we won together, everyone. So yay, challenge DLC.
Yay.
Next week, we had to displace one of our episodes in order to talk about NFTs. Well, that was hot. Striking all that was the iron was hot. So next week, we're going to pick up on the episode that should have been 228. It'll now be 232. And we're going to talk about maps, video game cartography, map design, level design. It's kind of a subset of level design. But we're going to talk about, map, yes or no. What about no map design? All that. We're talking about it next week.
We will. See you next week.